Hello, guys, and welcome back to another time-lapse episode of my dailies. This time, I decided to focus on an environment based on ancient civilization. Uh, I pretty much do a lot of these lately for some reason. I think I really enjoy the topic of ancient civilizations, and I, I think there's something mysterious about them, and there's always this. There are always those questions which people ask themselves, like how did they manage to achieve such performances with their architecture, and this kind of stuck with me, and it's something which I really enjoy approaching and thinking about creating my own civilizations and architecture and stuff like that. So even though I'm quite a huge fan of sci-fi stuff, I guess I'm just in a phase where I like to focus on ancient civilizations. So yeah, I can't help it. I'm a sucker for that. And yeah, for today, I'm focusing on desert-like architecture environment, something which is kind of like carved out of a mountain. I guess it's a pretty common topic, but nevertheless, it's one which kind of never dies, and people always seem to find it mysterious and always enjoyable. So, and I do too, and that's why I did it. That's why it's not probably gonna be the last piece you'll ever see, but yeah. So one thing you see me do often, and actually in pretty much every video, is that I start with a 3D landscape. I basically try every time to start by constructing a ground for my architecture, and it's mostly because it really helps me generate ideas, because every time I start creating those, I never really know what I'd like to do. It's kind of going with the flow, but having a generated environment helps me with that, because sometimes by mistake I might create a volcano or some sort of interesting mountain-like shapes, or some landscapes which have a river or stuff like that, and that kind of helps me picture what could fit such an environment. So it's a pretty imagination booster for me, and that's one of the big reasons why I like 3D code and why I like to use it. And actually, it's pretty much the only 3D program I use. I think it's sufficient for now. Yeah, but in the future, I'll definitely try to learn a few more. Extra software knowledge is always helpful, and you never know how it's gonna help you. So yeah, again, also, if you notice, and it's something which I try to preach a lot, regardless of what you're trying to draw, if you're an artist, is always start your environments with not only environments, but your concepts with simple shapes. You always start from small to from simple to complex, or from big to small. And this is a not doing so, it's a mistake I used to do really often, and I see a lot of people still doing it. And I think it's mainly because people rush to create masterpieces, and I think that's a pretty bad mentality to have when you create something. You have to allow yourself that element of failures, and I during the years I found out that it's more rewarding to focus on numbers rather than focusing on one piece and trying to create it like super polished or perfect. And yeah, because when you focus on numbers rather than, let's say, create 50 environment sketches or 50 heads or characters or weapons or whatever, um, when you say 50 and when you engage to that number, you allow yourself to fail because you have a huge number. Or 50, it's a modest number, but when you engage to the number rather than one single piece, you eliminate the stress of, you don't put all your hopes and expectations on one piece. You rather create one, see what works and what doesn't, absorb the knowledge from the first one, try to implement it on a second one, which most likely will be slightly better, the third one even better, even the fourth one even better, and so on. And by the time you reach your final piece, if you look back to the first one, you will see the improvement. And this is all about. This is not about you creating only one strong, super perfect piece. It's about progression and development, and getting rid of the fear of putting the pencil on the paper, or in this case on the tablet. So yeah, it's I'd rather encourage you to use this mentality rather than, again, focusing on one masterpiece drawing. Yeah, well, going back to the drawing, as you can see, I'm trying to focus most of my details um, where I want you to look at, which is that main tower. And also another thing to help guide the viewer's eye, if you may notice that most of my geometrical shapes are squares and rectangulars, and I put a cylinder and a dome to kind of break the composition and create something which I call a hero element, which is basically something which pops out from environment, something which is really different and makes the viewer look at it straight away. So yeah, and you will pretty much notice this in most of my environments, that I use some kind of this hero element, and I invite you to try and use it as well, and see how it works for you. And yeah, I'm still taking care of some details here and there, putting a lot of windows, and try to create some facade designs. And yeah, so rather than that, one of my biggest fears when I started those challenges, and I actually started this challenge solemnly because of this, is that I wanted to start adding colors to my pieces. I feel that I got to this point where I'm quite confident with my line art, and I feel that I got to a pretty decent level, but at the same time my color and rendering skills didn't catch up to my line art level. So line art is something which I truly enjoy doing, and I don't really want to get rid of it, but I'd still like to implement some colors and add mood and stuff like that. So I'm trying to mix them, and as I tried to tell you before, I'm focusing on numbers rather than one single final super rendered piece which will look awesome. Because if by any chance I will do that and it will look bad, I would feel very discouraged and not want to do that again. But when I'm gonna draw 50 color sketches, moody sketches, and if I by any chance do at least one, two, or three good, I can always go back and analyze them and see what I did good, and how to implement that in my all other pieces. So this is the way I prefer to learn, and I found to be one of the best ways. I encourage you to try it. Might not fit you, and that's totally fine. At least you can get rid of it. So yeah, at this point I'm pretty much trying to separate foreground, midground, and background. I noticed that I'm missing the foreground, which I added right away. Um, Cleaning it up a little bit, trying to distinguish the shapes a little bit more, so I can afterwards add some colors and establish a little bit of mood, and yeah, play with that. Here I put a little bit of gradient on the sky. Try to figure out how I want that to look, and I always start with the sky because the color of the skies determine the color of your shadow, because the color of the sky also determines the atmospheric perspective, and I don't want to get too deeply into that, but basically the background is supposed to have so the architecture from the midground has the same color of with the architecture on the background, but the architecture on the background is a little bit less saturated. It is mixed with the color of the sky, therefore a little bit less saturated. I hope that makes sense. Um, I'd really like to talk about that on a different video with a little bit more detail, so I can clarify that. But I hope you understand at least a little bit of what I'm talking about. So yeah, and here I'm again adding the shadows, which is basically a layer put on multiply and contains the color of the sky. As you can see, it's a little bit purplish, blue purplish, and it's the same in the background and in midground and in foreground as well. And yeah, I'm adding the details right now here and there where I feel that I can improve it a little bit. I also in a while I will add some cast shadows, which are again pretty much the same color as the other ones, and yeah, but this one was pretty simple to draw. I try to keep every piece simple because I try to deliver them at least once every 2 or 3 days. Unfortunately, I cannot do it more often, but I try at least to give you that and to satisfy and meet my expectations of delivering 50 of them by the end of this year. And yeah, by the way, this one is 11th, so yeah, I still have 39 more to do. Right now I'm trying to add a few extra colors, see how that works. Wasn't really satisfied with the results, so I kind of delete them. I'm trying to add some lightning here and there, just to separate the shapes a little bit better. As you can see, I'm not really a fan of soft brushes, so everything I do is with a pretty much hard brush. I have I used some soft brushes here and there, especially on the clouds, but often I try to avoid them, mainly because I like hard edges, and I try to convert everything I do into hard edges, even if they were supposed to be soft, and so on. Even on the clouds, which are supposed to be pretty soft, I still have some hard edges here and there. But I guess it's just a style, a personal style which I developed. Um, yeah, so at this point I'm pretty much almost done. I just have some details, and I'm experimenting a little bit more and adding stuff here and there. Right now, as you can see, I'm doing the clouds with the soft brush and everything. Yeah, and I guess that's pretty much about it. Again, I try to keep everything simple, and the more I do, the more complex and the more courage I develop to try different things and add different stuff into my environment, and yeah, make them more complex, and hopefully not invest too much extra time, because I like to deliver them almost daily. So yeah, thank you again for supporting me and watching this. I hope you managed to watch until the end. And yeah, I'll see you on the next one. Bye bye.